Testing. Hello. Wow. It is December. Where did this year go? I can't believe this is my 11th wrap up of the year, but here we are. A monthly reading wrap up for November. November was rough. If you have been here for that, you've had a few sneak previews if you've watched any videos I posted this month. We're not doing well mentally, physically, emotionally, especially with our reading. Good news is I've recovered from a cold that you are going to be hearing about for an entire month because I tend to react to sickness poorly because I'm a person who likes to be productive, and so when I'm sick, I just push myself to do things to distract myself from being sick. So I recorded a bunch of videos over the weekend in which I was deeply struggling, like I was at my worst for my cold. So all future videos for this month, just warning you, are gonna come with a introduction by me being like, I'm sick. I'm still sick, but I've got water. We're gonna push through. And you know what would have made being sick all month better? Having good books to read. And unfortunately, this was a mixed bag of a month leaning towards not so good. Unfortunately. Got some good ones at the very end though, which we love to see. But before we dive into that, of course, I need to thank the sponsor of this video, which is Skillshare. It's the end of the year, in case you didn't notice. And I find at the end of the year, I am simultaneously looking forward and looking back. And what I try to do every year, which is hit or miss, is try to restart my love of journaling. I love to journal, but I am very bad at keeping up with it. So I need a lot of prompts. I need a lot of hand holding to get me to journal. And Skillshare is a platform that has classes in so many different things. And I've talked about their creative writing courses a lot, but they also have a lot of journaling courses that I really adore. The one that I have already open on my list is art journaling for self-care, but there's also writing for self-discovery, which gives you writing prompts. There's also a 10-day journaling challenge. They have learning paths in case you are interested in a specific skill that you would like to learn. They curate a bunch of their classes into one simple path for you. Whether it is you are trying to get into some kind of more creative hobby, such as creative writing and journaling, or if you are trying to develop skills for your career, such as graphic design, marketing, things like that. Skillshare has it all. So definitely check them out. I will have a link in the description box. First 500 people to click that link will get 1 month free of Skillshare. Highly recommend, regardless of what you are interested in doing. I've used them this year looking back. A lot of Canva for my work. A lot of DSLR photography because that's something I'm getting back into. Journaling and creative writing have been like something I've had so much fun with this year. So really, regardless of what you're looking for, please give Skillshare a little peek. And thank you as always for supporting this channel and supporting my many hobbies. Skillshare is both a wonderful and a dangerous resource because there's no holding you back. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Let me pull up the list. Okay. Oh, geez. This month was so bizarre. I don't even remember, as always, I don't really remember how I started the month, and I actually started it strong. So good news, everybody. Let me take a sip before we fully dive in. This is one of the, I would say possibly one of the first cases where a book I heard about from booktok exclusively was good. And that is The Blighted Stars. This is a sci-fi trilogy. I've only read the first two. I actually got the third one out from the library. There was a very long holds list, but it was 500 pages and I was in the midst of what looked to be a pretty nasty reading slump. I knew that my mental state did not have it together enough to commit to a 500-page book, and I didn't want to try reading it and then not enjoy it because not the book's fault, but my fault. So I've only read the first two. In we go. Blighted Stars. I'm pretty sure the little blurb when I opened it said something of like, she's stranded on a deserted planet with her arch nemesis. And I was just like, put it in my cart. I waited for a long time at the library, and it is such a great feeling when you wait for a book and it hits. So this was a case of the wait paid off. Blighted Stars is sci-fi.
A few moments later.
Okay, I'm going to try to explain that once again because that was horrible. How do you even describe this book? Basically, we are in a far future where Earth is uninhabitable. Now the world, humankind is sort of run by these 5 main families that are all focused on a different thing. So we have one family that's more involved in agriculture and distributing food, and then another family, which is the one that we follow, they're in charge of mining and kind of creating spaceships. I don't know how to like put that all in one thing, but we're essentially all living in spaceships or space stations, and we are trying to find a place that could be inhabitable for us, again, another planet. But in order to maintain the space stations, in order to travel using energy to fuel the spaceships, and also to reprint ourselves, because now we can upload our consciousness to databases and download into new bodies whenever physical body dies, which is a cool concept that I'm not going to go into too much, but it's cool, okay? And it's not infinite. If you do it too many times, you crack, right? So they're not immortal, but okay. We all need this mineral. So this particular family that we follow is in charge of going to all of these different worlds and harvesting minerals so that we can sustain life, basically. But they are trying to recover from a pretty bad scandal where the head of this family, his bodyguard / shadow is everywhere he is, came out and publicly accused this family of having mining practices that kill any world that we could potentially live on, right? It's weird that every time they go to a planet and they harvest this mineral, the entire planet becomes uninhabitable. Like, what a funny coincidence, right? She, of course, is iced. Her consciousness is uploaded to a database and is just like sitting in computer jail for potentially all of eternity. And that's when our main character gets involved. He is the son of this family, the heir to the throne, if you will. And he's much more scholarly. He just kind of stays at the university, nose in a book kind of guy. But he wants to go on the next mission to mine the next planet to prove that this isn't true, to prove that his family is not harming the worlds. It's just a weird coincidence, blah, 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 blah. Shit hits the fan. During the mission, we've got people stranded. We've got spaceships that have been taken over by a weird virus or we don't know what. People can't get home. A certain criminal has somehow found herself printed into a body of the main bodyguard for the son, the heir to the throne. And she just kind of plays along because she wants to prove that she's right. The son wants to prove that he's right. But she needs to like fake being his protector in order to like not be put back in jail. You know, she's undercover. I'm not explaining this well, but it was so good. I loved the first book. The first book was Chef's Kiss. I think the way that it ended, I needed the second book immediately. The second book gets pretty complicated. There's just a lot of mysteries and a lot of loose ends to the point where I kind of forgot what we were trying to do. Like, there's so many things that we need to fix. I kept forgetting what we were actually trying to do. That being said, I read the second one the day of the United States election. For me, I live in Korea, so it was happening during the day for us, not overnight for Americans. And so I was just laying on the couch. But this story was so chaotic and dystopian and that I was sort of distracted in a way. I was like, okay, we're living in a dystopia, but this dystopia, at least I'm not in space and won't be like accidentally open the wrong door and be sucked into, space. Small blessings. I don't know. Basically, it distracted me a little bit. I was able to kind of connect to a different dystopia, and it sort of helped me get through the day, I guess. That being said, I think it was a little messy. In my notes, I wrote that the second book was very meandering. It felt like so much happened that we forgot about people, and why did some things feel so urgent? And then we have 3 months where things don't super matter. Yes, there were a lot of weird time jumps. So that's kind of why I kept kind of forgetting the plot. Yeah, I apologize that I can't talk about these books really well. I have filmed this 3 times, and I can't It was great. If you like enemies to lovers in a sci-fi setting rather than fantasy, I don't want to spoil it for you, but there's part of the plot that is so good, so interesting. Thinking about what species will do to survive. Can we demonize a species for doing things if they're just trying to survive? Because at the end of the day, that's what like all species are trying to do. I wish I could tell you more, but I don't want to spoil it at all. Give it a try. I'm so sorry. But give it a go. The Blighted Stars. Okay, I'm so sorry that was a mess. Let's get into, hopefully I can explain these books better as we move forward. The 13th Child. I made an entire video of my live reaction to this. I'm glad I did, but I'm also glad I can talk to you again about it because I've sat with it for a little bit. The 13th Child is by Erin A. Craig, who wrote House of Salt and Sorrow, House of Roots and Ruin, Small Favors, all books that I enjoyed. She has a very kind of gothic, eerie way of writing, very atmospheric. I've enjoyed her work, right? So my expectations for the 13th Child were incredibly high, and I think that was definitely detrimental to my experience. But this was a retelling of Godfather Death. So our main character was born, she was the 13th child in her family, and her parents were very poor, very unhappy. And so when the gods came and were like, hey, we'll take this child off of your hands, because 13 is a lucky number for the gods, basically, they kind of auctioned her off to the highest seller, and she was given to Death, the god of death. And so we follow her basically from birth, and she is a very lonely, unwanted child. She eventually, Death finally comes to like collect her and raise her. She is given some death and some healing powers, and she just kind of becomes a healer, eventually leading her to work in the palace, and that's it. This book was strange in a lot of ways. I think it was fine, but it was just a letdown for a couple of reasons. One being the pacing and sort of the energy of the book was very flat. There was never like a crisis. It wasn't until the very end that I felt like a climax point, but everything else was just sort of like, this is what's happening, and then she does this, and then she does this, and then she does this, and then she does this. It felt a little boring because everything was just felt quite flat to me. Even though there were things happening, they just didn't stand out as like, wow, that was, an exciting part. There was also a romance that was not given any time whatsoever. If you're looking for a kind of romantasy, this is not it for you. But there was like enough of it that I wanted more, I almost wish there wasn't any at all. And then third is, I'm not quite sure what she was trying to say about death. There were a couple portions where she talks about perhaps it's better to kill someone early before they become evil. Like, there's a lot of talk of, oh, it's so sad that this person died young, but don't be too sad, because if I can see the future, and I know he was going to grow up to be an abusive husband. It happened quite a few times where like someone will die, she'll feel bad, and it'll be like, oh, don't worry, he was going to become evil. Or, oh, don't worry, the world is better off without him, honey. Don't feel bad. We also talked about like mercy killing, but then they weren't mercy killing. I just had a lot of questions for Erin. But I will say the ending was great. I think to me, the story read like Erin had a concept and she had the epilogue. And so she tried to write herself to that epilogue, and it didn't hold up. Like the ending was so beautiful, and I cried. Like, it was great. The last chapter, the epilogue, gorgeous job. But to get there was just kind of boring. Just kind of a letdown based on what I thought it was going to be. That's the 13th Child. I think if you're looking for a standalone, it definitely had, like, I would say kind of winter would be a great season to read it in. It was very dark and lonely. She was lonely for most of it, so it just felt a little quiet and sad the whole time. But don't read it if you're interested in, I don't want to say action, but just kind of like, that was, I lack the words, but that was The 13th Child by Erin A. Craig. Ooh, after that, I went on a little trip out of the city. I have another channel, Cari Cakes, which is where I have vlogs and things like that. And it was a gorgeous autumn day. We had a really strange autumn this year here, so it finally felt like autumn. Went out into a forest, had a great time, but that involved a couple long train and bus rides. So I grabbed, oh, do I have it with me? Of course not. I don't know where it is. I have the physical version, but I finally read Veronika Decides to Die. This was recommended to me because I asked for recommendations for books by Slovenian authors or books set in Slovenia. Obviously, this is by a Brazilian author, but it takes place in Ljubljana, which is in Slovenia, where I went this summer. And most interestingly, it starts on November 11th, and I read it on November 11th. So Veronika Decides to Die is exactly what it sounds like. Veronika Decides to Die. We start with our main character trying to kill herself. She fails, and she ends up in a mental hospital. And this was, I think, written in the 90s. It has a very 1990s style approach to mental health. So a lot of things were outdated and kind of made me be like, ooh, you know. That being said, I actually enjoyed reading it. I think that the end result, the sort of message of the book, reminded me of a little bit of like The Midnight Library with Matt Haig. It's very like, what a wonderful life. Oh, wait, now that I came so close to death, I realized that, isn't life beautiful? You know, one of those. But I thought it was better. It was less hokey. I think it was more understanding of why people want to die. Like, there's a song by the 1975 called I Always Want to Die Sometimes. And so many people, myself included, relate to that. It's like, you don't necessarily have suicidal thoughts, but sometimes you're just like, I'm so tired, you know, or I'm so bored. Wouldn't it be nice if we could just turn it off for just a little bit? That is sort of how Veronika feels, is she's just so blah. What's the point? You know, waking up every day doing the same thing. It's just, I don't want to do it anymore, is essentially how she feels. And I think that the author is sympathetic to that, and I appreciated that. Instead of it being like, I felt like The Midnight Library was very much like, there's so much to live for. How could you even think that? But this is more like, yeah, life is kind of a shit show a lot of the time. It's pretty boring. We have no choice in the matter. We got to go through it. But what if we framed it this way? And I appreciated that, at least. So yeah, it was a quick read. Perhaps if you liked or didn't like The Midnight Library and you want to read something of that vein, give that one a go. Veronika Decides to Die. Okay, hold on. I need to hydrate before I start talking about this book. I did a live reading reaction to this book. So the next two books are going to be ranty. I'm going to try to keep it quick. I don't know who recommended this to me. I know that I found it on booktok. I forget how this got on my radar, but if I find you... I read Metal Slinger, and it was so bad. I'm honestly like shocked and angry at the amount of, if you look on Goodreads, like the amount of five-star reviews for this book. This book has a twist at the end. Literally the last two chapters flips everything on its head, and it doesn't make fucking sense. Like, let's get that straight. If you were to read the book again, it does not make sense. The reason it came out of nowhere is because it shouldn't happen. Like, it's the way that the book is written, there is no way that this twist could be possible. It is a bad twist. It is just infuriating. The book is in first person. I can't get into it. Anyway, I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, the twist is not possible. Guys, I feel like because of the shock value of the twist, people are finishing the book, going on Goodreads and being like, holy shit, that was the best book I've ever read. Whoa, what a shocking twist. Amazing 5 stars. And it's like, there's a difference between being shocked by something and it being good. You know, I just can't wrap my head around people being okay with that plot twist. Like, it was just lazy writing. I can't even go into it. It was so bad. So Metal Slinger is about a girl who is from one kingdom that sometime in the past during a war has been banished to live on this island, but not island. They live like in these trees in the middle of the ocean. guys. I don't know. Anyway, they've been banished to live there. Once a year, they get to go to this market to trade and like have good relations with the people who banished them. Something happens when she goes to the market. She causes a kind of international incident and she gets wrapped up in this whole thing. Okay, I know that that sounds like a really lame summary, but that's essentially what it is. Oh my God. Like, not only were there grammatical errors on the first page, spelling mistakes, the writing was atrocious, and it made me feel like the author thought I was stupid. Like, I talked about it in the video, but she uses the phrase in juxtaposition to probably 5 times as if she doesn't think we could notice the juxtaposition. It would be like if a romance writer was writing the grumpy and sunshine trope and kept telling us like, wow, look, isn't her charming sunshine kind of personality in such juxtaposition to his grumpy one? Do you see that? Did you get the joke? Okay, on to, like, there are time jumps that just make no sense because you'd assume if 2 characters are stuck, for example, maybe, I don't know if this is actually happening, but there are 2 characters stuck on a rowboat together for weeks, okay? You would expect that the way that they talked to each other, maybe the way that they interacted would develop, would change. Maybe they'd get closer, maybe they would have jokes, maybe, you know, they've spent a month together on a rowboat. No. Every scene sounds like it's happening one day after the other until 5 pages into a chapter, she suddenly lets you know, oh, it's been about a month. And I'm like, and they're still acting like this? It was so dumb. It just felt kind of insulting, honestly, as someone who loves fantasy, romantasy, etc. It just felt like this person was cashing in, writing a shitty book because if she put the correct keywords, it would blow up on booktok. And it feels like someone is laughing at romantasy readers. It was a joke of a book. And I'm being mean. I feel like I'm being a little mean, but also we deserve better. That was Metal Slinger. If you want to know what it's about, just watch my video. I tell you everything. It's not even funny of like, ooh, maybe I'll read it for fun and also cringe. No, you're gonna put yourself in a reading slump. It's bad. It's bad. Okay? Metal Slinger. To further compound my pain and agony, I read The Courting of Bristol Keats right after that, thinking Mary Pearson's gonna come in, save the day, give me a great book. This did not happen. I'm gonna try and be less angry about this, but The Courting of Bristol Keats was so highly anticipated for me. So highly anticipated. Mary E. Pearson wrote The Kiss of Deception and The Dance of Thieves, trilogy and duology, respectfully. So fun. YA fantasy at its finest. Nostalgic. It just, oof. Threw me for a loop. Speaking of twists that actually make sense and track. All right. Love her work. Love her work. So when I saw that she was coming out with an adult fantasy that was skewed more towards fae compared to The Cruel Prince, I was like, seated. Yes, thank you. I don't know where Mary E. Pearson went. This felt unedited. It was not thought through. I just can't, I'm so let down by this book that I can't even point to what was wrong. We are following our main character named Bristol Keats. Her upbringing was quite strange. She's the middle child of 3 sisters. Her parents were very much like nomads. They may or may not have been doing like illegal shit, but whatever. It was a loving family, but they definitely were like living out of their van, leaving town in the middle of the night. Like they never stayed anywhere for more than a month, you know, homeschooled kind of thing. And when she loses both of her parents, she becomes the kind of breadwinner and trying to make ends meet, and they are running out of options for money, for support, for food, for all of this. So when she starts getting letters from this aunt that she didn't think that she had, saying that she has some artwork, like she has a gift basically that she would like to give to Bristol so that they can, she wants to financially support the family. Bristol has been brushing them off, but finally she gives in and decides to meet with this aunt. What we know is that the aunt is really a fairy and needs Bristol to come to fairy because there's some crisis going on and they're looking for humans with a particular power that Bristol seems to have. Bristol makes a deal with the Fae in order to protect her family. She'll help them with their little thing, and we follow her into fairy. So I love portal kind of magic. I love when a mortal has to go into a different realm. Love it. Was very excited. And this just didn't do anything. There is romance, but it is off the page and really weird. There is a connection between the romantic lead and Bristol that I found really weird, and it was never addressed that, hey, this is weird. There were POV switches that were so bizarre. There were time jumps. We start off with this sense of such urgency, right? We're running out of time. We have to find a mortal with this power. That's why we've got to just snatch Bristol right now. We can't wait. And then we just aren't in a rush anymore. It was so slow moving and bizarre. And the ending, I could not believe she would end it like that. It's not even a cliffhanger. It felt like we stopped in the middle of a chapter. And this was 500 pages. It's a duology. This was only the first book, and it's 500 pages, and I feel like nothing happened. Her writing style, she did Yearning so well in her YA books. She made a fantastic magic system. This magic system is just we're fairies. We can just do shit. And there's no rhyme or reason to the magic. I don't know why it happened the way that it did. I'm not going to read the second one. I don't give a shit. And I'm so sad about it. So sad about it. And I think coming off of Metal Slinger, I was already just pissed. And this needed to be worked and reworked a couple more times before it was put out to us. And I don't know what happened. That was the book I was looking forward to the most this month. And that's The Courting of Bristol Keats. But then I have good news. Thank God. Unexpected hero of the month. Okay? Pro tip. For your library, if you use Libby or if you just use a normal physical library, right? You can request books to be purchased by your library before they come out. So I often do that. If I see a book is going to be released next year or something like that, I'll go search it on Libby and put a kind of notify me when you have purchased the book, right? So there are a lot of things that I have tagged for notify me when you purchase this that I don't remember. I don't know what they're about. Okay? This was a case of that. This was The Hollow and the Haunted. It just popped up on Libby being we bought the book you asked for. And I'm like, thank you. A guardian angel was looking out for me, saw me struggling, and gave me this book. The Hollow and the Haunted is about a society where it's just normal small town America, but there are a few families who have magical gifts, usually dealing with necromancy in some way. And we are following our main character, who is the eldest teenage son of this one family. They kind of do little simple magic, right? If you're being haunted, if you have a cursed object in your house, they're going to get rid of that for you. That's kind of what they do, right? They deal with ghosts and curses. And so they're used to weird shit going on. But when one day our main character goes to the bathroom in the morning to brush his teeth, looks in the mirror and sees a dead boy staring back at him, mouthing the words, "Find me," he's a little creeped out. He's like, okay, why am I being haunted? I'm the one who has all of these protective charms on me. If anyone's gonna not be haunted by a ghost, it should be me. Who is this dude? And what makes the haunting even weirder is that he runs into this boy alive and well the next day And he happens to be the teenage son of the rival family. I don't know if it was just the name, because somebody's last name is Hawthorne. Something about it gave me like Inheritance Games vibes, just because one of the boys is really rich and lives in a kooky mansion, and I think his last name is Hawthorne. It is like a Romeo and Juliet style, like these families do not fuck with each other, but also our main character is like, I think I have a premonition that you're gonna die, and it feels like it would be irresponsible of me to not figure out how to help you. So maybe, just maybe, we could team up and try to figure out how to not get you killed. It's a kind of rivals to lovers, closeted repressed boys. It's kind of like the grumpy antisocial black cat plus the golden retriever boy. It was a great time. I really enjoyed it. It's YA. However, it is a duology or a series. I don't even know. I thought it was a standalone, and I'm getting closer and closer to the end of the book, and I'm just like, shit. Oh no. And of course it ends on a cliffhanger. So beware. But if you are interested, I think it's compared to, oh, my battery's dying. I think it's compared to like the Raven Cycle. It didn't give me Raven Cycle vibes, but it was such a fun time. I highly recommend The Hollow and The Haunted. After that, I read an arc that has been sitting in my NetGalley for a very long time, and the book is actually out now. I read it like the day before it came out. This is City of Nightbirds. It's by the same author as Beasts of a Little Land, which I really liked. Complicated feelings. This book, just to first and foremost, gorgeous writing. The way that this author writes is beautiful. That being said, I have some questions for her, or like just complicated feelings. We are following a ballerina throughout her life. We have a couple different timelines that are eventually woven together, but we are learning about her life from age like 5 until present day, growing up in Russia. Her entire life is ballet, climbing the ranks to eventually be a ballerina for the Paris Opera in Paris. Okay? I just love it when an author can write about something that I don't know that much about and make it so beautiful. Like, I felt like I was in this ballerina's body. Like, I was reading it and I could almost feel my body moving. I had such a physical reaction to this book. When she's describing music, I really felt it in my bones. That's why I say the writing is an incredible feat. Stunning work. There were like a couple little things that I was like, I don't love that, but it was clearly just her character was maybe a little sheltered, maybe a little conservative, right? So I was gonna have pretty much no notes until out of the blue, like, this takes place again, like almost present day, and it comes up the Russian invasion, annexation of Crimea. There are a couple characters in this who are from Ukraine. Her main kind of love interest slash partner for most of the book is like half Ukrainian, I think. And her partner comes out and talks about it in a very pro-Russian way. They're already in Paris at this time. They're internationally known, so famous. And he gets essentially canceled because he's pro-Russia. Like, yeah, man, like, go take over. That's fine, you know? And so she kind of talks about how because of this, that character is not able to perform anymore, blah, blah, blah. Our main character gets a lot of feedback from her fellow dancers who, like I said, a lot of them are Ukrainian and are from other parts of the world, telling her how hurtful her partner slash boyfriend's words were. And her reaction, our main character, her reaction, we never learn what she thinks about it. She's just pissed that her boyfriend opened his big mouth because now she can't dance with him. She talks about it in the way of like, I'm an artist. I only know ballet. Like, I'm just dumb. I don't know anything about politics. I love Russian, like I love the land of Russia. I love the music, I love the culture, I love the art of Russia. But that doesn't mean I love the politics. But she doesn't straight up say that she agrees or disagrees with the action of the Russian government. It was just like, why are you putting this in here to give us nothing? Essentially what the author was saying was that artists shouldn't talk about politics, or like you can love a country's cultural product and not agree with its politics, which like that's a really interesting nuanced discussion, right? Like, how do we interact with Dostoevsky while Russia is invading Ukraine? That would be a very timely, interesting conversation to have, but instead it's just like, I only know ballet. And then we move on. It's like, oh, a couple months have passed. I guess my partner can come back to dancing. And she, for no spoilers, but she eventually has to go back to Russia to visit family. And she is like on a no-fly list because of what her boyfriend said publicly. And also, like, she used to dance for this one dance company in Russia that is, like, under investigation for having, like, ties with the Russian government. So she's on a no-fly list. And that's, like, a big problem for her. Like, oh, how horrible is it for me? I'm this innocent bystander. I had nothing to do with anything. I'm just trying to dance. I just want to dance. And I can't get home. And my boyfriend posted something dumb on Instagram. And I just want to dance. Like, it was really strange, to say the least. It was, and like, that was such a tiny part of the plot, really. Like, that probably took place over the course of, like, 5 to 10% of the actual plot. Like, everything before was, again, just gorgeous about training to be a ballerina. And then that was just, like, thrown in there. And it's like, I just don't know. It was a stunningly written book, but that little part was so bizarre. And the author, I saw people reach out to her about that in like Instagram comment sections and stuff like that, being like, hey, little weird what you said there. And she just kind of doubled down on the I love Russian music, I love Russian dance, I love Russian authors, and that's completely separate from what Russia is doing and what Russia has done. I don't know. So if you've read it, let me know. A beautifully written book that I wish just handled a very important topic better. Like, even if that was her stance, give it a little more time to breathe then. Like, if you're just going to throw that in there of like, listen, ballerinas, just let them dance. Just let them dance. If that's really your stance, like, give it a little more time to breathe. It was so blink and you miss it kind of thing. I don't know. City of Nightbirds. Please let me know your thoughts. Thank you. After that, super quickly, I picked up, I just could not read another long book. I finally read The Haunting of Tram Car 15. This is a novella preceding The Master of Djinn, which is one of my favorite kind of steampunk alternative history fantasy books. I had so much fun. So this one is only like 139 pages. Read this in basically one sitting. It takes place in the 1910s. In Cairo. If someone had accidentally opened a portal to another world where all of these jinn and magical creatures came through, helped Egypt defend itself from the British Empire. So Egypt stands as a strong center of this new world order with magic. As you can see, it's steampunky. There's a lot of like weird locomotives and obviously tram cars. Yeah, one of them is haunted. So these two kind of detectives need help exorcising a demon, if you will, from this tram car. And it was just fun. Exactly what I needed. The Haunting of Tram Car 15. And then as I was reading this, I was like, God, I just love, like, you know how every kid goes through like a dinosaur phase and then usually an Egypt phase. My Egypt phase was big. Okay, I feel like you never get over your obsession with ancient Egypt. I'm still fully there. And so as I was reading this, I was just like, damn, I want to keep reading books set in Egypt. Let me find one. And I had seen a lot of people, like just recently, talking about the duology by Isabel Ibanez, What the River Knows. And I believe the second book is What the Library Hides. And it takes place in Egypt. It's allegedly like The Mummy meets what else was anyway. Kind of loosely inspired by The Mummy, a YA fantasy. Yes, about a girl from Argentina whose parents are always gone in Egypt doing stuff. This is, again, in like the 20s, I believe. And one day she learns that her parents have died and she inherits all of their money. And what else is she going to do with it but get on a boat and go to Egypt and find out what happened to her parents? Her uncle is there because her uncle and her parents worked together. And she joins him on a quest, eventually looking for the tomb of Cleopatra. I DNF'd this hard. I just don't think Isabel Ibanez is for me. I read her first book and it was kind of like, all right. It was one of my first reviews that I did for my book channel, honestly. And I was still very much in the, I don't want to say anything bad about books phase of my booktuber career. And so Woven in the Moonlight, I was like, you know, it's a book that I read. Right? Not interesting, but meh. So I went into What the River Knows with kind of like, expectations, but I had heard from enough people that it was really great. And this was weird. I couldn't tell who it was written for because it's YA, but the characters were so annoying and insufferable that I felt like perhaps if I was a middle grade reader, I could overlook their kind of red flags and the annoyingness and the kind of like, you know, but some of the language, like they were cussing and things like that in a way that made it feel definitely not middle grade. So I couldn't tell who we were writing this for. I also didn't know where it was going to go because a lot of it was about colonization and how Egyptian treasures were stolen by, you know, the British, the French, taken away, not staying in Egypt, things like that. But we have this girl from Argentina coming over to dig for Cleopatra's tomb. You're the one who has all these weird trinkets stolen from Cleopatra's tomb. It was weird that like in the same chapter, we'd have like talking about how horrible colonization is, but then also talking about the reason why Buenos Aires and Cairo are so gorgeous is because they look so European. Like, she kept being like, oh, Buenos Aires is the most beautiful city in the world because look at our European streets. And same thing with Cairo. She was like, look at these boulevards that look like they belong in Paris. I was just sort of like, what are we saying? Maybe if I had continued to read it, it would have become more clear, but the characters were so annoying. Yeah, I just couldn't put myself through another book. I couldn't drag myself through a book that I didn't really love after having had the month that I had already had. So I put it down, but let me know what you think about it. I only really read to maybe 30%. Yeah, I hated the love interest. I hated the main girl. Let me know what you think. What the River Knows. So needless to say, I was kind of scrambling at the end of this month. I didn't really have any books coming in from the library. I didn't know what I wanted to read. I just like wasn't in the mood to read, but I also don't know what to do with my life if I'm not reading. So I was looking deep into my Kindle to see what I had on there. And I finally read Heartless Hunter. I didn't read or review it for a long time because it is published by St. Martin's Press, which I was participating in the boycott. It was a marketing boycott. You could still read and purchase the books, but booktubers were just not reviewing these books for free. The boycott ended on kind of a weird note. So I'm still hesitant to talk about St. Martin's Press books. So I will just add that caveat of this is a St. Martin's Press book. So please do with that what you will. But I read it because a bunch of people were talking about the sequel. It's a duology. So I was like, oh, okay, the sequel's out. Let's give it a try. And lo and behold, the sequel doesn't come out until February. I was just bamboozled by a bunch of Bookstagram people who got the arc way ahead of time. I was like, damn it. I was shocked. I really thought I did my due diligence. No. So Heartless Hunter is a romantasy. I think it does romantasy well. There were a lot of elements that were weird to me, but you know what? It did its job. This was very much a witch meets witch hunter romance. We have a society where there were witches kind of ruling everything until there was an uprising. And now the normal mortal people are purging the world of witches. Most witches have been killed off, but there are some still in hiding. If you are a witch, you are living in constant fear. The whole magic system of that was quite cool. They use blood to perform magic, and so every time you cut yourself to use blood to perform magic, you get this like very obvious silver scar. Now, of course, that's a mark of death, because if a witch hunter thinks that you're a witch, they'll just check your body, and if you have one, you're screwed. There's no way to explain that away, right? So our main girl is a witch who is undercover. She is like a rich noble woman, but by night she uses her magic to sneak other witches to safety, because once you get outside of this particular kingdom, witchcraft is more accepted. So she like breaks them out of jail once they've been caught by the witch hunters and shuffles them somewhere else. So she is a wanted woman. Her identity as the Crimson Moth. She is enemy number 1 of the witch hunters. She is of marrying age and has decided that she needs to marry someone high up in the government so that she, or in the like witch hunting world, so that she can get more information, more insider information, because it's getting harder and harder to break the witches out of jail and get them to safety, right? So if she has an ear, she acts like this dumb socialite, but if she marries like the head of the witch hunters, bada bing bada boom. So she is trying to go after one of the many witch hunters, but what happens when one of the witch hunters is also pursuing her because he thinks she's the Crimson Moth? So they're like courting each other, but they're both doing it for different reasons, like to hurt each other, to use each other. Things I didn't love about this book. Number 1 would be because the magic relies on blood and she can't cut herself or else she'll get a scar that will show that she's a witch. She has to harvest her menstrual blood. I've mentioned this before, but like when authors really focus on menstruation, I'm always like, oh no, I've had one too many of my favorite authors turn into TERFs. I'm not saying that this author is a TERF, because there was nothing TERFy about this book at all, but it just, the second we start talking about magic, the magic of menstruation, I'm like, oh, worried. So there was that. But again, I didn't get a whiff of TERF in this book, so that's, you know, good to hear. So there was that. There was also the whole thing, I get that it's romantasy. The way that the witch hunter is going to confirm whether or not she's a witch is to check her entire body for scars, right? So his partner keeps pushing him to get her naked. Like that's his whole thing, is he's not just courting her, he's trying to sleep with her so that he can see her whole body and check. And so one time they like hooked up, but it was dark. And so his partner was like, nope, you got to do it again. You got to seduce her in like good lighting. Or I was just kind of like, that's weird. However, it was like, for a romantasy, I think it balanced the fantasy and the romance quite well. For some reason, for me, it felt like the story went by really quickly. I sobbed at the end. Again, not a finished duology, just like where the first book ends, sobbed. Kurt had to hold me. Like I walked out of the bedroom and I was just like, Kurt, I need to cry. And he was just like, come here. Like that bad. It made me feel things, but it felt very quick. But I think that if you're in a reading slump and you're looking for a romantasy to kind of help you get back into reading, this one did the damn job. So not a favorite. I definitely have issues with it, especially looking back. But as I was reading it, I was fully entertained and then heartbroken. So The Heartless Hunter. Sorry for that mixed review. Oh my gosh. Next up, as I said, I'm digging through my Kindle looking for things that I have purchased a long time ago. I finally read Vita Nostra. My notes say, not the weirdest book I've ever read. This is about... Oh, how do I even describe this, actually? This is about a girl who eventually gets admitted into this magical... Is magical the right word? Magical, for lack of a better word, university. She has to go through a couple tests and trials that are very, like, grim fairy tale-esque. I don't want to spoil anything because I think that the best part of this book was just reading and not having any idea what was coming. But and I feel like I was interested in it until maybe 50 to 60%. And then it got so strange that it didn't even make sense anymore. It felt very much like, speaking of TERFs, okay, TERF warning, this is not me telling you to read this book, but if you happened to have read The Betrayals by Bridget Collins, she also wrote a book that was like about a magic system that she never explained, and you just had to kind of go with it. And for that one, it was written really beautifully, unfortunately. So it was like, I was fine to go along with it just because it was gorgeous to read. But Vita Nostra, to me, wasn't gorgeous to read. Like, I finished it, but I couldn't tell you what really happened. So I personally wouldn't recommend it to anybody because there was no payoff. For me, I thought, like I said, the first 50% was interesting, and then it was just like, ugh. But then again, I know people who really liked it, so I don't know. But for me, it just kind of did nothing to me, sadly. That's Vita Nostra. It felt just like very dark, #study core. So I wrote, it's not the weirdest book I've ever read, because I've read books that are stranger, but they eventually make sense. This book was weird in the fact that it just never really made sense to me. And I'm glad some people connect with it, but for me it was just kind of like, I was so lost that I didn't get anything. Yeah, sadly, Vita Nostra was wasted on me. There you go. After that, I pulled out the big guns. I read A Mountain of Mirrors and Starlight. This is by the author of A Forest of Dreams and Whispers, which I loved. I really had a good time with that one. It felt very much like, if you loved The Cruel Prince, go read that. Specifically, if you loved the Cardan-Jude dynamic, go read A Forest of Dreams and Whispers. I thought it was great. And so this book is the sequel, but it follows kind of the next generation. Like, the characters from A Forest of Dreams and Whispers are in this book, but they are like adults, you know. So while you technically don't need to read Forests in order to read Mountain, I would highly recommend that you do. I also think that Forest was much better. A Mountain of Mirrors and Starlight is, whereas Forest is meant to be more of a Sleeping Beauty retelling, Mountains of Mirrors and Starlight is meant to be more of a Snow White retelling. I didn't really get the Snow Whiteness to it. We're essentially following a fae princess who is tasked with finding a mortal prince who has been kidnapped, and she has to go find him and bring him back, basically, without spoiling too much. It was fine. I don't think it needed to be as long as it was. I felt like it was very long, but also nothing happened. But things also happened really fast. Like, she's wandering in the woods looking for the prince, and spoiler, she finds him in like 2 pages. Like, where was the search? I thought most of the book was going to be her looking for him. He is found the same day she goes out to start looking for him. So there were just things like that, where things I thought would take longer happened in the blink of an eye, and then things that I thought we could have wrapped up real fast happened over the course of many chapters. So to me, this one kind of scratched an itch, I guess, of like just a nice, fun, it felt a little nostalgic, romantic-y kind of vibe, but compared to the first book, this was not as strong. So if you haven't read A Forest of Dreams and Whispers yet, please go read that. If you are just out of fantasies to read, give Mountain of Mirrors and Starlight a try. Cool? Cool. Sorry that was a quick one, but it just kind of like was fine. This is also when I started to descend into the worst of my sickness. So I was cranky. I had this bad reading month. So I finally read How the King of Elfhame, I've never said that out loud before. Elfhame learned to hate stories. How do you pronounce that, actually? The World of the Cruel Prince. Elfhame? Elfhame. Anyway, this is a collection of stories by Holly Black. It's about Cardan's childhood, but also a little bit post Cruel Prince. We see the characters from the Cruel Prince after those books have finished. So this was lovely. I read it in bed. I was sick. I had just taken some cold medicine. And yeah, read it in one sitting. It's beautiful. Well, let me go get it. If I have the physical, I should be showing it to you. Here it is. Beautifully illustrated. Yeah. I didn't know what to expect. I thought maybe it was going to be just like a collection of stories that didn't necessarily tie together, but this is actually one story. It all ties together in the end. Okay. Yeah, it was exactly what I needed, actually. Very happy to have finally read this, especially on like a cold winter night. Thank you, Holly Black. And then finally, last book, I promise. We started on a high note, and I'm happy to say we ended on a high note thanks to Reads with Rachel. She recommended a book called The Gilded Crown, and I kind of didn't ask any questions. This book is exactly what I wanted the 13th child to be. So way back 10, 20 minutes ago when I was talking about The 13th Child by Aaron E. Craig, what I desperately wanted the 13th child to be: necromancy, political intrigue, a complicated system of religion, a little romance. The Gilded Crown has that, and did it in a way that I wanted it to be. I wanted Aaron Craig to do. We are following a girl, our main girl. She, for whatever reason, has the ability to go into death. It seems like it's kind of this limbo between fully dead death and life. And so she is able to go in and bring people back. She first recognized it when she was little during like a hunting trip and saw this little baby fox caught in the trap and it died. And she just suddenly was in death and just took him back. And he, the fox was back to life. And so throughout her life, she is able to do that every once in a while. So when her mother dies in childbirth, and she decides to bring her mother back from the dead, things get very complicated. Not just her relationship with her mother and how that changes, but also the fact that now people know that she can bring people back from the dead. So eventually the queen comes knocking at her door because the crown princess, the only heir to the throne, has been assassinated. She's been poisoned. And wouldn't it be nice if we maybe stopped a civil war from happening and brought her back to life before people notice that she's dead? Our main girl, of course, gets roped into servitude to the crown. Basically, she is kept at the capital as the resurrectionist. But of course, every time our girl brings someone back to life, she has to donate a piece of her soul. There is not only political intrigue, but there is a kind of war between two different religions going on. So we're learning about kind of the backgrounds of these religions, which I love. There is romance. I feel like I'm not explaining it too well, but I really enjoyed it and I'm really excited for the next one. I think it definitely had me crying. It had me really frustrated. And I appreciate this, that I was getting frustrated with the main character, but I didn't hate her. I understood her decisions, but I hated them sometimes, and I deeply appreciate that. I like when I can disagree with a character, but also be like, I get it, girl. That was very much how I felt reading this. I just wanted to take her and be like, go home, run away, change your name, fake your own death. But I got why, she stayed. Yeah, I liked it. So, if only the 13th child had done this, but very happy to have read it. So that was The Gilded Crown. I feel like I have been filming for 2 hours and I don't think I said a single sentence that was actually comprehensible. I'm so sorry. I feel like for both the books that I enjoyed and the books that I didn't enjoy, I'm just unable to speak about them and I don't know why. This was a really weird reading month. So if you could help me out, if you loved or hated any of these books, if you could expand on your thoughts down below, that would be helpful. I would say The Blighted Stars, The Hollow and the Haunted, The Haunting of Tram Car 15, and The Gilded Crown are ones that I would say go look into them, and if you're looking for a good book, I enjoyed all of those. Mountain of Mirrors and Starlight, Heartless Hunter, The 13th Child, Veronika Decides to Die. Reader's discretion advised, if you want to spend money on them. And then for the rest of them, God help you. I don't know. And now I'm off to go back to my Christmas rom-com marathon. I am officially halfway through. I have read 5. I still have 5 more to go. Having fun. I actually have recommendations for you this time. I feel like last year, all the books were kind of traumatizing. This year, I've read some good ones already. So that will be coming your way very soon. But I'm going to leave you here so that I can get back to reading. Apologies for this discombobulated wrap up. I will try to be better next month. Thank you so much to Skillshare once again. I'll have a link down below. First 500 people to click it will get 1 month free of Skillshare. Highly recommend. Pick up a new skill before the year ends, you know? And yes, I will catch you when I catch you. And I promise I'm going to stop talking about my cold because today is my last day. I'm going to be better tomorrow. I can guarantee. So I'll see you then, okay? Stay safe, stay healthy. Hope you have a great end of the year. See you later, okay? Love always. Bye.